Hey kids, welcome to the garage. It's opening weekend for a medieval The Black Labyrinth, but there's a couple other games that came out on Friday as well. For example, we've got this little gem right here, a little sci-fi horror shooter called Retchid. Now, developers from Beneath Software reached out to me via Twitter, kind of a surprise to be honest, and they remembered that last year during Steam Next Fest, I think it was in September of 22, one of my top 5 games demos that I played during Next Fest was this game, Retchid. I was really impressed with the demo. It was kind of a little rough in some places, but considering that From Beneath Software is essentially just a 3-man team working on this game, I was very impressed with it, and I was really looking forward to more. So as a result, From Beneath reached out to me just a few days ago, as of this recording, and they said, hey, we were really happy that you enjoyed the demo. We want to offer you, we want to send you an early code for the early access that's coming out on the 18th, and we hope you enjoy the game. Let us know what you think. I was like, oh fuck yeah, that's right, Retchid. I really have been looking forward to this game. So after playing it, 8 hours of content, 8 hours of game time in this early access release, which, most shooters these days, you'd be lucky if you get 2 to 3 hours out of an early access initial release. 8 hours. I'm going to say this right off the jump. Retchid is certainly not lacking in density, in content, and in secrets, and in things that you can find, things that you can do. It is certainly not lacking. And right there up front, oh my god, there's a lot going on here. And that is also pretty impressive considering that the game doesn't really stop to tell you exactly what's going on in the game. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Long story short, the outset here is that you are an engineer who's been called to this station on the Titan moon of Saturn. Something went wrong. We don't really know what. Nobody really says. But the moment we land, we can already tell that there's some weird shit happening here. So basically we get to go through, kind of piece together things that are happening, some weird genetic experiments that were found. It's very Lovecraftian, very elder mythos going on. This is the kind of shit that I eat up, okay? This is the genre, this is the setup that I eat up, and we've been eating good this year for some sci-fi horror. We had the Dead Space remake, we had the Callisto Protocol. Okay, maybe the Callisto Protocol isn't exactly an example of eating good, but I mean, we had it. And now we've got this entry here, Retchid. I almost forgot to mention Signalis, but I haven't played Signalis, so please forgive me for not mentioning that. Retchid is, off the jump, best way I can describe it, this is Doom 3 by way of Dead Space. It combines the best elements of those two games together, and I rewatched my Next Fest video, and the way I described it was, it's not exactly trying to be necessarily a Doom 3-like, so much as it kind of comes off across as the second cousin of Doom 3, which it does still feel like that. You've got the isolationist horror, you've got the movement controls, you've got the graphics here, running on Unreal Engine, but absolutely looking like id Tech 4. This is a beautiful looking game, too. Not everything is as super bumped map or detailed in certain places as I would like it to be, and that, I mean, that's pretty forgivable at this point. We're still really early access here, for better and for worse, but to start off with, this game is absolutely gorgeous. They do some wonderful tricks with the lighting effects that, like, had me stopping in places to really admire it. I really love the aesthetic here. Again, pulling some very Dead Space 2 vibes, and just the visual flair between the enemies and the weaponry. The weaponry, almost every single weapon, when you pull it out, has got like a tiny little animation of some kind. One of my favorites, it's very subtle, but when you pull the grenade launcher out, the drum barrel just kind of like rotates in place just ever so slightly, and it's very cool. It's very cool to see a lot of attention to detail put in here. You could see it everywhere, from the set dressing to the way that rooms are constructed. The lighting effects, the outdoor environments, which you do go outside every now and again, they look fantastic as well. And honestly, all of this visual acuity lends to the eeriness and the creepiness and the vibe that the game is going for. I am I'm a scaredy cat. So when you hit the vibe right, you're going to have me on edge. You're going to have me kind of like a little fucked up, and I'm not going to like it. And there were a couple of instances here where I was definitely left uneasy. There's one sequence in which part of the station is flooded and you have to go underwater. Number one, don't put me underwater with shit. Number two, don't put alien fish underwater either. But the way that it is presented with these dismembered bodies floating about, leaving like little clouds of blood, this is not a 100% realistic looking game, but the presentation of the stylish elements and the visual design here is really on point, and I really did enjoy that, and I really was affected. There's some things here in this game that I've never seen done in other sci-fi horror games, and will actually stick with me. There's a sequence where I was kind of dodging bullets in a cold storage facility. There's slabs of meat in this meat locker hanging from the ceiling, and I was ducking between them and dodging bullets coming my way from between the slabs of meat. This game has a lot of moments that really reach out and grab you and make you go, oh, holy shit, this is really cool. The downside is, and again, really want to couch this in the fact that this is a very early access game, and it feels very early access. There are a couple of cons to this game and the experience that did hold it back slightly for me, but I am, based on what I've seen here and what I've played and how I felt coming out of it on the other side, I do have confidence and high hopes that the devs are going to be able to address some of these things, but there's a couple that I'm not sure that they're going to be able to with a sense of ease. I know that development of a game requires so many steps and so many questions and so many considerations. Just what doors are openable? If you've got a number of doors in an area, like in this facility that you see here, is this door coded to open? Should this door be breakable? There are so many questions that go into development, and you have to code them all, that like I see a lot of reviewers talk about games and their reviews and their feelings on games from the perspective of the player specifically and what they would want to see in the game. And I try to factor in, when I'm talking about games, specifically games in early access, how feasible is it to actually implement certain mechanics into a game when it's like this far along, and or just with the tools that you're working with. So I want to talk real quick a few more pros about the game, things that I liked. I did like the overall vibe of the game. I liked the incredibly minimalistic story. By incredibly minimalistic, I mean it's almost non-existent. But as a horror fan, specifically, well, not even particularly sci-fi horror, but as a horror fan, you could do a horror story that has absolutely minimal to no story or explanation of what's going on and have it work. This game, Retchid, reminded me a lot of a movie called The Void. And if you have not seen it, but you are a fan of sci-fi horror, I cannot recommend this movie enough. The movie, The Void, has almost no story. Like, it fills you in just enough gently on relationships between characters and enough of what is kind of happening in the background. But you are kind of squarely placed into the same perspective as the characters of the film who are experiencing these goings on, and all of them basically have no idea or context for what is happening, and they are experiencing it just in that confused sense of what is happening, and things slowly unveil and reveal themselves. And Retchid is doing something very, very similar, where it's not really setting you up. You just walk in and you immediately know that there's some shit happening. Don't know why you've been called out there. There's no reason. Fuck it, I don't need a reason. I'm called out here and there's some shit happening. Now, if a game can pull that off and keep me invested in what's happening, then I'm on board. And Retchid does that. It does that with subtle environmental cues. It does that with some truly haunting imagery at times. It doesn't go over the top. It doesn't become too explicit, but it has enough showmanship and presentation to present enough to you in a visual way to kind of let you know the sort of evolution that you're facing of the horrors of what's taking over this facility. And I deeply, deeply appreciate that. I do like the PDA system, which is another kind of callback to Doom 3. I like the weapons. I really like that your first weapon, it's like an arc laser taser gun. It is your primary weapon on the outset, and you do get other weapons, but man, if you need to save ammo, this will work in a pinch. It has, well, all of the weapons have a primary and a secondary fire, but I like this one because it just fires those little taser bolts, but you can also charge it up to let loose one big nasty bolt that can do a smaller chain lightning attack towards other nearby enemies. And another thing that I like about it is that it's also useful as a tool. You know, kind of a Dead Space callback, if you will, in that there are some energy panels that need to be recharged so that you can open some doors, and you can use the arc gun in order to do that. The other weapons are, I like them. Some of them fare better than others. The submachine gun is good. It doesn't feel like it has that much punch to it, though. Something else I noted in the demo, I really wish it felt like it just had a little more oomph behind it. You know, maybe the sound effects where, you know, you just turn the reverb down a little bit, you know, just make it sound a little bit punchier. Shotgun totally makes up for that. Shotgun fucks. This shotgun is fantastic. I really like the punch of it. The secondary fire is fine. The secondary fire on the shotgun releases a little flashbang to sort of like stun enemies. I never really found it useful, so I never used it very much. The grenade launcher is really good. It's probably the fastest firing grenade launcher I've used in a game ever, and the secondary is a mine, a proximity mine, which is great. And then there is a mining laser. Well, I say that in quotation marks because it's basically a Gatling gun. You know, and it works just like a Gatling gun. You know, secondary fire starts the barrel spinning. Primary fire just fires the damn thing. And the weapons are really good. I really liked them. I found them as effective as it could be. The only downside to that is I felt like combat in this game is a little too loose for my liking. It's sometimes the enemies, they like, I felt like there's a just enough of a lack of precision from the weapons that moving and firing is kind of a fool's errand at times. You turn just a little too quickly. You fire just a little too loosely, like your shots don't feel as precise as you want them to because there's just a touch of projectileness to them all. And when enemies are moving and you're trying to track them, combat feels a little too loose, a little too imprecise, and that can be a bit of a setback because at times you're going to be running really low on ammo, which is good for a sci-fi horror game like this. You kind of want there to be that inventory management, those resources, but here I kind of felt a little on edge for the wrong reasons, like any of my shots going awry because I wasn't doubly focused on making sure that I was having the precision that I needed to have in order to take out my enemies as quickly as I could. It felt less like poor management on my part, and it felt more like the mechanics of the game they're not quite tightened in there yet when it comes to the combat. And every shot is going to count because some of these enemies definitely take a few hits before they go down. Also tying in to the resource management. I felt like most of the enemies were a little spongy. Like you could take that down just a notch and make it so that these enemies are just a touch less resilient, especially since they do a lot of damage to you. Holy shit. I was tense at all times, and oftentimes in the way that I didn't want to be tense, because these enemies do a lot of damage, and you can and will die very quickly from them if you're not on your game, which can lead to the frustration of save points are a little too few and far between. Now, there are multiple save points scattered around each of the 7 maps in this game, so you can go back and forth between them, but we've got some very large maps, some very dense areas to navigate, which means that you're not going to have easy access to these save points at any given time. And sometimes you could get ambushed by someone and you've been like walking around this brand new area that you've just unlocked, haven't found the save point in that area yet, and you've lost quite a bit of distance, you've lost quite a bit of time, and it can get kind of frustrating if and when that does happen. And when I say that you have these dense areas to navigate, I really do mean that. They're big. And that's welcome, because there's a lot of exploration to be had here. One of the downsides, though, is that some of the areas look a little samey. Map to map, things do change from a visual perspective. But for the most part, you're seeing the same corridors, you're seeing the same signage. It is meant to be an industrial complex, and this is like kind of a uniform design, so it does get a little bit of a pass from me. But the caveat that I had with navigation and pathfinding is that this is a very intentionally dark game, and it is very, very difficult sometimes to be able to follow some kind of path because of how dark it is. Now, while I was playing, I thought one of two things. Either this game needs a flashlight mechanic, which, oh my god, I have never ever wanted a flashlight in a game more than I did with this. I kept pressing F, just assuming I would have a flashlight, and I there's none. It's not there. Or, and kind of more egregiously, the game needs a brightness slider. There is no slider or way to affect the brightness of the game itself. And that is kind of a problem because, you know, we're in the middle of a heat wave, so I'm trying to play this game during the day, and I've got my blinds closed as best as I can, but the sun still comes in, and if I'm trying to play this game at certain points in the day, the glare, just the natural light coming in despite the blinds, I could barely see what was going on the screen in front of me. In the very last section of the game, I was having such a goddamn difficult time trying to navigate my way, and I stopped and went to work, and then I came home from work. It's later in the day, and it's darker out, so now I can see better what's on my screen, and I was able to navigate my way with ease. And I think that's a kind of a problem here. I like these aesthetics, don't get me wrong. I appreciate the intentional use of dark and light to create a vibe, to create a mood. But unfortunately, when you don't have a flashlight to cut through the dark, when you don't have a brightness slider to turn things up depending on the point of the day, in a game like this, you're going to unfortunately run into players not being able to pathfind as well as the developers are going to want them to. And again, we are talking about dense maps, very intricately constructed and crafted facility corridors and areas. You're going to be running back and forth looking for keys, activating switches for ladders, opening security doors. You're going to be hunting down PDAs so you can find codes to doors so that you can understand things that are going on. This is a game that is very intentionally layered, and you are asked to navigate this space. And I did at times just felt a little frustration because I got lost more than once. A little too easily. I wondered if perhaps a map function would help. Your PDA, you can pull it up. You can have a map of the facility. Maybe you can just, you don't have to have an auto map like in Doom, but maybe just a map of the facility downloaded onto your PDA, a little marker showing where you are, and you can kind of look around and see, oh, I need to go over here, I need to go over there. Then you can kind of bypass the flashlight situation. Still need a brightness slider, but you can kind of bypass the flashlight mechanic. The flashlight, I thought, because it helps illuminate walls and areas so that you can see some of the areas that you're in, so that it kind of eliminates some of the sameness. But, I mean, again, I'm talking about implementing mechanics that, at this stage in the game, may be more work than what is doable, depending. It's a 3-man team. Now, and I don't want to tear down this game in any way, shape, or form. I really don't, because I'm really invested in Retchid. I'm enjoying this very much. I'm reminded of Hyper-Violent that came out a few months ago, and I played that, and I was really into it, and I couldn't kind of get a finger on the pulse of that game at first, and then I finally did, and then I got really into it. Retchid I was into right away, and I've maintained that interest throughout. The pathfinding, the inability to see in the dark, the frustration from getting lost, definitely wore on me a little bit. But then I'd turn a corner, and I'd come across a situation like, here is the flooded corridors, and going down into there and swimming, and it just grabbed me immediately. Discovering the first major tanky enemy in the game, who, against all odds, is wearing what looks like medieval armor, and it reminded me of Vermintide, and he carries a big fucking sword and like a blunderbuss that shoots grenades, which is like, hey man, I get it, we got some chaos, Cthulhu-esque, whatever the fuck is going on, I am down. It could be a little goofy, as long as it stays on point and on theme, I'll fucking be here for it. And I am. I love the enemy design here. AI could use just a tiny bit of work. I don't mind the zombie mutated humans being a little dumb and just running at you. That's fine. There's these mutated humans who will like just run at you too, but they have like a leaping attack, so you kind of got to time your attacks to stop them from getting you. Very clever. It's the floating squid dudes who like float down and throw their energy fireballs at you. That was where the AI was at the weakest for me, because they would frequently pop down right in front of me and just float there when I was expecting them to be just firing away while I'm trying to reload. But then they would just hover for a second and just kind of look at me like, hey, you're here, I'm here. You could reload your gun and then you could take me out. It's cool. Little moments like that where the AI just didn't quite activate and needs a little tuning. I mean, the best of the AI comes from the armored sword dudes. They're vicious. They'll be running at you, and like the best way to take them out is with grenades. But you shoot your grenade launcher, and they fucking hop out of the way. And I was taken aback. They're really mean. That coding is really good there. There are wonderful elements to this game that are really working. There are elements to this game that are still very rough and need some work on. There's a handful of things. I don't want to go into all of the specifics. Just some collision detection, enemies like floating or hanging in places that they very clearly shouldn't be, stuff like that. Just, it's early access. This is a game that, you know, sometimes in early access, you play a game, it's fairly polished for an early access game. Other times you play an early access game and you're like, yeah, oh yeah, this is some rough shit. But it's about the potential. When you pick up a game that's just released into early access, you're talking about the potential of the game, and you should be looking at the potential of the game rather than where is it right now. The potential for Retchid is impeccable. I was absolutely flooded with adrenaline during the finale of episode 1 here. It was really good. It's really good. I just would love to see a few things specifically for me that I noted tightened up here. It's the AI in places. It's the shooting and combat mechanic. Just really just like you're not constantly running and gunning and boomer shootering. But in those moments where it is really chaotic and suddenly you're surrounded or you're being ambushed, it can feel like you are fighting against the controls versus fighting with the controls at your side, and that can lead to some frustration during combat. And for the most part, either a flashlight mechanic or a brightness scaling. Brightness, I think, I feel like that should just be kind of an absolute, a brightness slider. You know, whether a flashlight mechanic can be whether a flashlight mechanic can be implemented, whether a map mechanic in your PDA can be implemented, which I think that would solve so many problems. I think if From Beneath can put a map of the facility into the PDA that you bring up, if you can get a map or maybe the option to download a map of the area to help with pathfinding, I think that would solve a lot of problems. Still leave it up to the player to get to where they need to go themselves, but pathfinding is probably, aside from the darkness in the game, pathfinding is probably my biggest issue. And I think if you can get that map in there, or at the very least a flashlight, I think that can absolutely help with navigating some of the samey corridors. Otherwise, the aesthetics here, the world building, very minimal but very visual. I really like the weapons. I really love the graphics. I really love what this game is doing and is pushing for. The soundtrack is excellent. Hands down, bar none. Soundtrack, fucking fantastic. Absolutely loved it. Just great shit. So, Retchid is out now, $24.99 early access. In my opinion, $24.99, $25 for an early access release on the outset is a little much. Some devs want to go that way, some devs don't. It is a little much. Now, I want to say that I think that this game is worth the investment. Pay the developers, give them the resources to make this game what it promises to be, and it promises a good time. There is so much going on in this game that is slowly unveiling and revealing itself, and I really feel like Retchid is going to be a big name in the sci-fi shooter just genre, you know? I mean, it already plays better than the fucking Callisto Protocol. So if you could give the Callisto Protocol your money, fucking go give Retchid your money. $25 gets you in on the front door, gives the devs some money. And I mean, my personal thoughts are that early access when it releases shouldn't be more than $20, and then when you go 1.0, then crank it up to $25 if you want. By that point, you definitely earned it. But that's not for me to judge or to say to a developer what they should set their price point at. When I think about the price point, that's me coming at it from a consumer point of view. But as someone who's played this game, as someone who is feeling, like, just really feeling what it's doing, and I'm really enjoying it, man, with some fine-tuning and the resources and the time, this shit is gonna be fucking baller. A sci-fi horror shooter set out there, like the vistas looking at Saturn in the background. Man, that's great shit. Anyways, kids, you've heard me ramble on long enough. Clearly, I had a lot of thoughts on this game, and I felt torn in times. I felt a little bad at times for being so frustrated, but then at other times, I was then swept up and enraptured in this game, and I really do enjoy it, and I am really looking forward to the updates. The finale of this episode is so good that episode 2, man, I really hope it's gonna be, something. But yeah, there you have my thoughts. God bless. Go give this game a look. If it looks like something you could potentially enjoy, I highly recommend it. It is very, very promising. It's not great yet. It is good, and it holds so much promise, and I want to see that promise fulfilled. But it's definitely still raw. It's definitely still early access, and that is only you, the player, can decide if that is worth your money at this point in time. So, kids, thank you so much. From Beneath Software, thank you for the code to play your game. I really, truly am looking forward to more. I hope that my criticisms have been helpful. I hope the notes have been helpful. And I'm seriously wishing Retchid the best. So, kids, I'm off because everyone else is playing the Black Labyrinth, and I've been waiting for that game for years. So I'm going to go get down on that. Thank you for heading out to the garage, and stay hydrated. Stay safe out there. See you next time.